1.6 H4M, HR 16 to 115 horsepower. The base 1.6-liter engine is of Japanese origin. It has a timing chain drive, and there are no hydraulic compensators in the valve drive. A typical Nissan creation, its main unpleasant feature is its gluttony of oil. Every third, or even every second H4M engine easily burns about 0.5 liters of oil per 1,000 kilometers. The manufacturer insured itself against owner complaints and warranty replacements by the fact that the supposed norm for this engine is oil consumption of 1 liter per 1,000 kilometers. The piston rings of this engine simply lie down. The oil consumption only progresses over the years and kilometers. 2.0 F4 or 143 horsepower. The older engine for the Renault Captur is well known from the Duster. This 2-liter naturally aspirated F4R has been installed in Renaults since the late 1990s. It is surprising that for almost a quarter of a century, French engineers have not weaned him from sweating oil. Moreover, it would be okay if he only let tears of oil flow down the valve cover. When driving over 100,000 kilometers, black spots covered with dust appear around the valve that controls the phase shifter. This is next to the oil filler neck. Here you need to change the valve sealing ring. The same situation happens around the perimeter of the oil pan. Its gasket on many F4R engines is not very durable. Well, you need to look at the crankshaft seals. The F4R engine still has its signature problem, albeit a minor one. During operation, a grunting sound appears, something similar to a short-term squeal. The sound occurs in the crankcase ventilation valve, 8,200,291,355. This happened during the warranty period already with mileages of 5,000 kilometers or more. In many cases, Renault dealers have replaced the VCV valve under warranty, although this grunting is not a breakdown or malfunction. The sound occurs when the membrane balancing under the force of the spring and the pressure of the crankcase gases blocks the holes for the outflow of gases. By the way, the craftsman figured out how to modify the VCG valve so that it does not grunt. But with its modification, the main thing is not to overdo it, otherwise the engine will almost unhinderedly suck crankcase gases along with oil vapor into the intake. Otherwise, there are no problems with the F4R engine on Capturs. Just change the oil every 10,000 kilometers. Do not forget about replacing the timing belt every 4 years or every 90,000 kilometers. If suddenly the engine starts knocking after a cold start, then listen to the only phase shifter, 7,701,478,459. This gear costs about $200 today. 1.3 TCe H5Ht, HR 13 DDT 150 horsepower. The updated Renault Captur lost its 2-liter naturally aspirated engine and instead received a 1.3-liter turbo engine. This engine was created jointly with Mercedes and is mainly found on the older Arcana. So far this engine is not suffering from anything terrible. This engine is very technologically advanced, with direct injection under pressure up to 250 bar, phase shifters, a turbine with an electromechanical wastegate drive, and an interesting cylinder head design. Its timing chain is slightly thicker than a bicycle chain, and the operating temperature can reach 110 degrees. Most often, owners of cars with a 1.3 TCe engine complain about oil consumption. This is a natural development of events after the oil has been overrun. The oil scraper rings of this engine are not too thin. The pistons have 4 holes for oil drainage, but all this is easily coked by burnt oil. If this is the outcome, Junior 5.5-street manual transmission, paired with a 1.6-liter engine, a 5-speed gearbox is installed. Mechanics. Usually there are no problems with it. TL8 6-speed manual transmission. The 2-liter engine is powered by a 6-speed TL8. On Capturs released before 2018, there was a problem with the reverse gear. It turned off spontaneously. That is, as they say, the transmission was knocked out. This problem was solved under warranty by replacing the reverse gear. But it's still worth checking whether the manual transmission lever remains in place when reversing or jumps out. Jatco JF015ERE0F11ADK0, the 1.6-liter Captur, updated with a turbo engine, is available in a 2-pedal version. Here a Jatco JF015E variator is docked to the engine. This is a very common transmission, which was purchased not only by the Renault-Nissan alliance, but also by Mitsubishi and Suzuki. Car manufacturers believe that the oil in this variator does not need to be changed, but this simply needs to be done every 30,000 kilometers, because all or products of the variator complicate the life of the valve body. The valve body here is very capricious. Its solenoids regulators are sensitive to the purity of the oil. A replacement requires 4 liters of special oil with Nissan NS3 or Mitsubishi J4 approvals. In this case, the pan is removed, the coarse filter and the pan gasket are changed. There is a fine filter on the side of the housing of this variator. It also needs to be changed along with the sealing ring. When the valve body starts to work incorrectly, the wear of the variator accelerates. When problems arise with pressure regulation, the push belt slips, causing damage to both the cones and it. In this variator, the pressure-reducing valve of the oil pump is rather weak. If it hangs, the variator begins to push and kick. The oil pump pressure-reducing valve was replaced with a modernized one. During hard use in the JF015E variator, the sun gear of the planetary gearbox may fall off. In this case, either forward or reverse movement will disappear. Where does the planetary gearbox come from in a variator? It was introduced here to expand the transmission range of the variator in its compact dimensions. If you don't spare money on servicing the variator, then it can easily last more than 150,000 kilometers before overhaul. Capturs with a 2-liter engine carried the archaic 4-speed automatic, designated DP8. This automatic got rid of many shortcomings and received a radiator for ATF cooling. In general, the DP8 is capable of traveling 250,000 kilometers or more without major repairs. True, there are cases when this transmission stopped working after a mileage of about 100,000 kilometers. To extend its life, you need to partially replace the ATF every 40,000 kilometers. Everything is simple with this. ATF is drained through the drain plug and filled in through the top one. This replacement takes about 3 liters of ATF. There is no seal under the hood, so all wet dirt from the autumn and winter roads flies under the hood almost unhindered. But there are suitable seals on sale that can be placed on top of the TV frame. Renault has equipped the Captur with auto start. It can be programmed via multimedia. The engine can also be started remotely. For this purpose there is a separate button on the key card. However, even during the warranty period this function stopped working. To resume auto start operation, you need to resolve the issue with the stop that presses the limit switch under the hood. The limit switch is installed on the frame above the left headlight, and the stop is on the hood. The rubber of the stop is too soft. It is pressed through, so when the hood is closed, the limit switch is not pressed. This is why auto-run doesn't work. You can deal with this misunderstanding in any way. There are many solutions. In Capturs, a positive terminal on the starter is oxidized. Due to corrosion, contact is lost and the engine simply does not start. The terminal should be cleaned and treated prophylactically so that one day you do not have to deal with a non-living crossover. All-wheel drive Capturs have a problem inherent in Dusters. The comb rings for the ABS sensors on the rear axle shafts burst. At the same time, all alarm indicators associated with the ABS system light up. There are no original rings, but there are many substitutes, both factory-made and small-scale, i.e. from the craftsman. The driveshaft on all-wheel drive versions can cause play in the crosspieces and even jamming of one of the crosspieces. They were out due to lack of lubrication, moisture and dirt. The original new crosspieces are not sold separately from the cardan, only assembled with the cardan for $600. However, all issues with the cardan can be resolved at specialized services, where the repair technology has long been developed. Between the rear gearbox and the propeller shaft there is a very reliable electromagnetic clutch. There is no need to worry about her. True, some fans of extreme off-road driving managed to kill it, and there have been cases of the mounting springs on its body breaking off. Owners of Capturs and other Renaults discovered that the oil level in the rear gearbox and gearbox was too low. If the car is completely new, then the oil can and should be added. By the way, its oil grades are different for gearboxes and manual gearboxes with angular gearboxes, like the Duster. The Captur can cause oil fogging in the gearbox. The source of the leak can be either the release bearing or the bevel gear seals. The Renault Captur suspension is very reliable, just like that of the Duster, from which it was borrowed. The bushings and rods of the front stabilizer last for 100,000 kilometers. Their price is reasonable, $9.20 for the original. The front suspension has one link for each wheel. Levers with riveted balls last more than 100,000 kilometers. The cost of the levers literally doubled to $140. Separately, you can buy aftermarket ball joints to install them on bolts and nuts instead of rivets. The shock absorbers of the front and especially the rear axle need to be looked after. They often began to fog up heavily even during the warranty period. The axle shafts last for at least 150,000 kilometers. The Renault Captur body is painted well. One gets the impression that it's even better than the Duster, because chips from stones practically do not appear. Although it is possible that this shows better aerodynamics of the body. These cars do not yet suffer from rust, although often the chrome decor not only becomes dull from reagents or swells, but it even becomes covered with red dots. There is only one complaint about the Renault Captur headlights. The halogen light is very weak. The situation with road lighting has become much better on the extreme version with all LED optics and on restyled cars. Renault engineers did not spare the door seals of this car. However, over time, the rubber sealing bands begin to bristle unsightly. First, the seals are bent at the top at the junction between the front and rear side doors. Secondly, the seal bites at the bottom between the side doors at the level of the chrome molding. It is better to re-glue damaged seals and replace them with new ones. The lower door seals on the inside and their locks rub off the paint on the sills because pressing too hard against them. The paint is rubbed next to the decorative door sill trim. To prevent this, the owner stuck armored film on the thresholds. The interior of the Captur differs little from the interior of the Duster in terms of space, but the design is much more interesting. There are fewer ergonomic miscalculations and a complete absence of old plastic that resembles recycled materials. Overall, the interior of the Renault Captur is just okay. The standard multimedia with navigation does not break, it just almost always slows down. Nice ventilation deflector grills sometimes stop opening and closing because a weak traction breaks off inside. It happens that the glove compartment lid rattles or opens when driving over potholes. The clutch pedal may squeak when pressed. As it turns out, one or both limit switches located under it are creaking.